सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। During this week, we are going to study a section from an Upanishad called the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Upanishad, as you very well know, means self-knowledge. The word Upanishad itself reveals that. That word has three components. Upa and Ni, they are the prefixes, and Shad or Sad is the verbal root. Upa, Ni, Shad, or Upanishad becomes Upanishad. That word Upanishad itself reveals what the subject matter is and what it accomplishes for us. The prefix upa is in the sense of samipye, proximity. So this is the knowledge of something which is proximate. How proximate? Unconditionally. So the table is more proximate than the wall is more proximate than the river, the body is more proximate than the table. The most proximate or the unconditionally proximate, as far as I am concerned, is my own self, nothing nearer to me than myself. Even nearer than body, nearer than prana, the vital air, nearer than the mind is the self. So upa, in sense of proximity, brings us to the idea of the self, Atma. So this is a knowledge of Atma or the self. What kind of knowledge? The prefix Ni reveals that nature of knowledge. It is Nishchitam Jnanam, ascertained knowledge. Knowledge which leaves no doubts or errors. No doubts, no samshaya, no viparyaya. In the knowledge there can be these obstacles. First, avaranam, ignorance, is the first obstacle to knowledge. Samshaya, doubt, is the second obstacle. Viparyaya, the false notion, is the third obstacle to knowledge. As long as one or the more obstacles is there, so long the knowledge cannot be determined, ascertained knowledge. So this is Nishchitam Jnanam. Knowledge which is without, of course, ignorance, doubt, as well as error. Therefore, Last night a question was there, Swamiji, the means of knowledge are said to be Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Again that comes from this Upanishad, where Sri Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi, Atmavare, Drashtavya, Shrutavya, Mantavya, Nididhyasatavya Maitreyi. Hey Maitreyi, Atmavayare Drashtavya, Atma must be seen, known. Drashtavya, known as an immediate reality of myself. This is, there the word used is Atma must be seen. Now of course, it cannot be seen like a flower that I see in front of me, but the verb seen is used here, the sense of a clear knowledge. Thus, when I see something like this, a flower in my hand, that is a knowledge which is clear knowledge without any doubt or error. So, hey Maitreyi, Atma must be drashtavya, must be seen. Why? But there was a long preface before being told, before this was said, Atmastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati, navare patyuhu kamaya patih priyo bhavati, Atmastu kamaya patih priyo bhavati. Hey Maitreyi, it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is dear. Wife thinks that husband is most dear to me. It's not for the sake of husband that the husband is dear. It is for the sake of self that husband is dear. And then Maitreyi would say, how about wife? It is not for the sake of wife that the wife is dear. It is for the sake of the self that wife is dear. So many illustrations are given. And ultimate conclusion is Atmastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Whatever it is that is dear to us in our life is so because the self is dear to me. Someone or something becomes dear to me when it facilitates my own love for myself. We are born with a natural love for ourselves. But then it does not always happen that we love ourselves because of many notions that we have about ourselves. Self as it is of course lovable, most lovable. But the self I think of may not be lovable. If I think that I am a Swami so and so, I am a father, I am mother, I am tall, etc., that self may not be the most lovable. Because that is when the body is taken to be self, and I think that I am father or mother. So the self that I take myself to be normally as a man, a woman, husband, wife, father, mother, even that self also is not always lovable to me. But self is that which is unconditionally lovable to me. But unconditional means at all the times, at all the places, and all conditions, I always love myself. And why is it so? This was told to Maitreyi in order for Maitreyi to recognize what we really love is happiness. And when it's said that we love ourselves, that means that, hey Maitreyi, happiness is yourself. The reason for being told, Maitreyi being told is that don't look for happiness outside of yourself. You don't love the husband for the sake of husband. You love husband for the sake of yourself. You love the husband thinking that the husband is a source of happiness for you. Basically, what we love is happiness. And whoever or whatever we think is a source of happiness also becomes an object of love. Primarily, happiness is object of love. But if this gives me happiness, then this also becomes an object of love by being the means of happiness. Thus we love many things in the world. But that's all conditional love as long as they continue to give me happiness, make me happy. And there where Puja Swami would say, in the beginning these two persons say, I love you, I love you, I love you. But sometimes they say, I love you, I love you, I love you. And the love evaporates and you allow. But that cannot be with reference to the self. That I love myself today and may not love myself tomorrow. Under all circumstances, at all times, at all places, I always love myself. And anything that I love is because I love myself. Meaning that when this entity enables me to love myself, meaning that when it creates condition that I love myself, then I love this. Swamiji, you just said that you love yourself unconditionally. And now you say when this facilitates love for you, how can it be? I don't always love the self that I think I am. I always love the self that I truly am, but not always love the self that I think that I am. That I am a man or a woman or husband or wife, that self I may not always love. Because the husband that I think I am may be lovable under certain conditions and may not be. When that husband does something which is, says something, does something for which ultimately it regrets, for which he will suffer. So, meaning that the self that I think I am is not always lovable. Had that been the case, then Vedanta would not have been necessary. Meaning that all we want in our life is happiness or love. And I always loved myself. I always enjoyed myself, and that's all we need in our life. In which case, there would have been no need to study Vedanta. Vedanta teaches us how to discover love for our own self. Very strange, is it not so? How to discover love for our own self? Because, as Puja Swami used to say, the most frequently used word in our life is I. And most confusion that happens or prevails is also about I. I'm always aware of myself. But then, very often, I have many notions about myself. It's those notions that very often make me not lovable to myself. And so that Upanishad says, hey Maitreyi, recognize that you are always the object of love for yourself. Even when you think that you love the husband, the children and many other things, it is not for their sake that you love them, it's for your sake that you love them. the child also is lovable as long as it is favorable to you, conducive to you. Up to age 2, the child, you just love the infant. Once it becomes 2 and starts asserting itself, the terrible 2, then slowly that love, you wonder. And when at the age of 8 it says, when I tell the child, please open the door, why should I? Then everything is gone. So, other things are lovable as long as they satisfy the condition that they should love me or they should make me lovable to myself. Even though supposedly I love myself, I'm supposed to love myself, but I don't always. That is why I need the world to make me lovable to myself. This flower I love because in presence of this flower, I'm able to love myself. The flower creates a condition conducive for me to love myself. You'll be surprised, but think about that. Anything that anytime I love is because that entity facilitates me to love myself. When they satisfy all conditions that I want, they do everything that I want. Moment that does not happen, my love for that entity also slowly evaporates. But love for the self is always there unconditionally. So that's how that previous dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi revealed the love or happiness as the very nature of the self, and therefore Atmavara Drashtavya. Hey Maitreyi, you should know yourself. You are looking for happiness everywhere in the world, not knowing that through them you only love yourself. That you love a person when that person facilitates your love for yourself. When somebody does whatever all I want them to do, somebody smiles at me, Swamiji, how wonderful you are. Your talk was so great. I feel happy. And I love that person also. Because that person facilitated my love for myself. Swami, what did you say today? In your class. So when they raise some questions and doubts, etc., make me feel a little unaccepted, Then I don't love that unaccepted self, but this person created the unaccepted self, therefore I don't love that person. In short, when I'm saying that what we like and don't like ultimately all dissolves into ourselves. Because my love for myself is unconditional. I'm saying all this so that you can think about. Next time with a friend or somebody, you start thinking that maybe that fellow, right, I think there's some problem with that. Understand the mechanism of what creates that. Is as long as that person makes me lovable to myself, so long remains the object of love. When that person ceases to make me lovable to myself, that person also ceases to be object of love. Atma is object of love because Atma is happiness. Therefore, Atmavara Drashtavya. Hey Maitreyi, you should first of all know yourself. Because you're looking around everywhere in your husband, in your children, in many other things for happiness. You think that you love them, it is not that you love them for their sake. You love them for the sake of yourself. And so, what is Atma? This was explained in the previous Brahmana or previous section in great detail with lot of reasoning by Yajnavalkya to Maitreyi. Same Atma is now being explained in a different way, in a different set of reasoning. It is now in the form of a dialogue between sage Yajnavalkya and King Janaka. So this whole JyotirBrahmana is the form of dialogue between sage Yajnavalkya and King Janaka. Let us read the first passage. Page 3 in your handout, the very first statement at the top. Still pages are turning and turning. I will read the passage. You please repeat after me. Janakam havaideham Yajnavalkyo jagama samene navadishye iti atha yajjanakascha vaideha Yajnavalkascha agnihotre samudate tasmaiha Yajnavalkyaha varam dadau saha kama prasnam eva vavre tamha asmai dadau tamha samrareva purvam papracha. Everybody has this text. If you cannot read the Devanagari, then there is the English transliteration also. Yajnavalkya was a great scholar. In those days, the scholars used to go to the court of well-known kings. And these kings were, some of them, were known for the love for knowledge. So whenever any learned person came to the court of the king would have happily welcome them and request them to share their knowledge with the king. Or sometimes also the king would undertake a dialogue with them, question and answer, and learn from them. So some of these very enlightened kings were very fond of always learning. And King Janaka also was well known. To them was always desirous of learning more and more. Learning, of course, about gaining knowledge of the scriptures, knowledge of Ishvara, knowledge of self, knowledge of reality, even sometimes knowledge of the rituals. King Janaka also was one of those who had a great curiosity or a desire to learn, because he knew that knowledge is a means of freedom. that it is ignorance, only false notions born of ignorance that create in us a sense of bondage. We as human beings feel a sense of limitedness about ourselves. By bondage I mean a sense of dependence, a sense of helplessness very often. I am bound because I have to do this. Otherwise I am not safe, otherwise I am not happy, otherwise I am not accepted. So generally I feel a sense of dependence, sense even of helplessness. And therefore I do many things to feel happy about myself. I avoid doing many things. Thus in our life we observe there is constantly a sense of dependence, a sense of helplessness, that I have to do certain things. I cannot do certain things. I am not always free even simply to ride my motorbike or my motor car on the road. I must follow the rules of the road. In life also I am not free to do what I want and to follow the rules of the life. And very often I cannot do what I want to do because the rules do not allow them. And I do what I do not care to do because the rules require them. So when I go to dining hall and there is certain certain kind of food is cooked, why? Because Ekadashi. Ekadashi means this is what you have to eat. You are in ashram, therefore this is what? Evening, khichdi, morning, this. I have to follow rules. I am sure that this is a great place and they give you more than what you need and therefore you have love, whatever it is, but still. So in every situation there are always norms and we have to follow those norms. If you are comfortable with those norms, well and good. If you are not, we have to follow them anyway. What I am saying here is that we find that we are required to do a given thing or required not to do a given thing because the norms of life expect us to do that. If you enter after 5 minutes after 9, the doors are closed. And once you come here, you cannot leave before 10 o'clock. Whether you like it or not. You must have heard this funny story about a Puja Swamiji. He used to have these evening discourses in Delhi at 6:30 in the evening in Fiqh in a hall. FCCI, I think that's. Yeah. So, but then Swamiji was a very popular speaker there, but by 6:15 the whole hall will be full. If you arrived at 6:30 also, they may not get a seat. So this lady, who always liked to sit in the front row, and always make sure that she goes in time to occupy her choice seat. But today she was occupied with some other thing, the chore, and therefore she knew that she could not reach the hall before 6:30. So she sends her servant and tells him to occupy a given seat so that when she comes, he can get that thing. The servant is made to sit in the given chair on the front row. 6:25, Puja Swami came in, 6:30, the talk started. And this fellow, poor fellow who is sitting in the front row, looking here and there, where is she? Where is the mistress? She was late. So you can imagine the condition of that person, who is required to sit there, who does not understand and wants to get out, and you cannot get out. That's called helplessness. That's called bondage. So very often we also are subjected to many situations where we are not free to do what we want to do. And you have to do what you do not want to do, you cannot do what you want to do, etc., etc. So this is a sense of dependence or bondage and very often helplessness that I'm feeling. That's what Vedanta would call bondage. Dependence. Helplessness. And Vedanta gives us a solution as to how to become free. How to become free from this sense of helplessness. Thank you, Swamiji. Would you take us to a place where I am totally free to do what I want? Where I can say anything that I want? I can go wherever I want. I can eat what I want. We think that is called freedom. We think that the freedom is the freedom to do what I want to do. Thus I can assert myself. But when you have the freedom to do what you want to do, are you really free? He's a dictator and he dictates everybody and everything. He asserts himself in all conditions. Is he free? No? A dictator is free or not? Why not? No, nobody controls him. He does what he wants. Would you not like freedom like this, that what he says happens, what he does not happen, etc.? Isn't that freedom? Well, is there some bondage involved in this person, this dictator, so-called dictator, who has his way wherever he wants, who gets what he wants, who does what he wants? Would that be called freedom? Is there any bondage involved in that? What is the bondage?
Being a dictator is the identity of being a dictator.
Identity of being dictator. Well, okay. I'll have to think about it. Anything else?
Pushed by the desire to do whatever he wants.
Desire to do whatever he wants.
Pushed by that desire. So it becomes restless.
Right, good, correct. Even the dictator also is not free because his mind controls him. His likes and dislikes, raga dveshas, control him. Therefore, when his mind is overcome by raga, or attachment, or an impulse, even he doesn't have freedom to overcome that impulse. The impulse controls him. Is it not so? He gets angry. That anger controls him. So, person who is supposedly free as far as the world is concerned is not free as far as his own impulses are concerned. That person is controlled by his or her impulses anyway. So would you call it freedom? Even the freedom to do what I want, is that really a freedom? Because what I want, there is something that dictates me what I should do and I have to follow that. So there is even the dictator, the one who dictates everybody else, also is dictated by what he or she wants or doesn't want. So freedom is not the freedom of doing what I want to do. saying what I want to say, eating what I want, etc., etc. That is not freedom. That is what we think is freedom. That's what person is trying to achieve, the freedom. I want to achieve, I want to have enough money, enough power, enough play, fame, name, etc., so that I am free to do what I want. But even that is also not freedom, because then also that person is controlled by his or her impulses. So what is the real freedom? Not only freedom from the external world, but then freedom also from these internal impulses. And that is the true freedom. Even the world, I am not free in the external world. I may be imprisoned. People are even tortured also. And still, those who enjoy, there are some rare people who enjoy their inner freedom. They're happy under all conditions. So happiness is the same as freedom. Both happiness and freedom are subjective phenomena centered upon I, not centered upon things around me. I cannot describe freedom in terms of situation. Even if I describe, that would not always apply. The freedom is not centered on the situation. The freedom is centered upon I. Happiness is centered upon I. That is what Sri Jajnavalkya said. In a way, Navare patyuhu kamaya patih priya bhavati, atmastu kamaya patih priya bhavati. Hey Maitreyi, it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband is dear, it is for the sake of the self that the husband is dear. Navare jayai kamaya jaya priya bhavati. Not for the sake of wife that the wife is dear, it is for the sake of self that the wife is dear. And so forth. Gives a long list. Navare sarvasya kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati, atmasu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Hey Maitreyi, it is not for the sake of all that all are dear to you, it is for the sake of yourself that all are dear. And very elaborately that theme was expanded in the previous section as to how it is self there is unconditional love for the self. Self gives unconditional happiness. That is the true self. It may not be the self that I think I am, but what's the true nature of self? The self that gives me unconditional happiness. I think that I am a man, that may not give me unconditional happiness. I am handsome, you find more handsome. I am tall, you find more tall, etc., etc. And so it's all relative. That is self that gives you the unconditional happiness. And so that was the theme of the previous section. This JyotirBrahmana that we are now going to study is also going to explain the same self. There are no other things, there is nothing else to talk about also. Upanishad is only one topic, and that is the self. Swami, would you not get bored from one Upanishad to the other? Fortunately not, because every Upanishad gives us a different insight about the self, about the truth. Even though the subject matter of all Upanishads is the same, you call it self, you call it God, you call it truth. But each one gives us, the reason why we have several Upanishads is because each Upanishad gives us a different insight, a different way of contemplating upon the self. Ultimately, Upanishad enables us or wants us to contemplate upon the self. And each Upanishad gives us a different version of how to contemplate upon ourselves. There is also this tradition in the Upanishads that the teaching is imparted in the framework of a little story, a little anecdote. It's called Akhyayika. You can start the lecture just like that, or you can give discourse in the framework of a little anecdote. Anecdote is called Akhyayika. So very often we find, there are some Upanishads we don't find that. Ishavasya Upanishad begins Ishavasamidam Sarvam, etc. There is no Akhyayika. Who is talking to whom we don't even know. Who is the teacher? Who is the disciple? Where this the dialogue took place, we don't know. Kena Upanishad, Keneshidam Padari. Again, who is the teacher? Who is the disciple? Where did this dialogue take place? But in some cases, like Kathopanishad, very elaborately the whole situation is described. Of Nachiketa and Yamaraja, etc., and of all conditions the dialogue took place. So that is called Akhyayika, an anecdote, which gives us a background of the condition in which this dialogue took place. It makes us, they say, that it makes it easier for us to understand the subject matter. A very difficult subject matter is communicated with the help of this anecdote to make it easier for us to understand that. Sometimes the story is elaborate, as in case of Kathopanishad, the elaborate story of Nachiketa, and in what circumstances he met Yamaraja, the Lord of Death, and what circumstances Lord of Death imparted teaching to him. There's got an elaborate story or description. And sometimes there is no such description at all. And sometimes there is sometimes anecdote is long, sometimes short. Here the anecdote is in the form of a dialogue between sage Yajnavalkya and King Janaka. So that we get a little flavor of the situation in which this teaching was imparted, and that gives us also a certain mental framework to understand this teaching. So here the passage starts with saying, Janakam Havaideham Yajnavalkyo Jagama. See, Yajnavalkya went to Janaka, King Janaka, Vaideha. Videha is the name of the kingdom. And the Janaka is the king of this kingdom of Videha, sorry. So it's called Janaka Vaideha. Sometimes the word Vaideha also is interpreted Videha. Deha means body. Videha. So Vigataha Dehatma Bhavaha Yasmat Saha Videha. The one from whom the identification of the body has gone away also is called Videha. Meaning Janaka is credited to be an enlightened person who was free from the identification of the body, meaning that who was free from the idea that I am the body. Meaning that who was rooted in knowledge of the self that I am Brahman, I am consciousness, which is other than the body, mind, sense complex. And mostly Upanishads elaborate this viveka or discrimination or separation between the anatma, non-self and self. Atma, anatma, viveka. Viveka, separation. Atma, the self. Anatma, non-self. Separation between the non-self and self. Why do you need to separate the two? Why do you need to separate the self from the non-self? Because we are born with identification of non-self, thinking that I am born with the idea that I am the body, I am the mind. It is that identification which is the cause of all the sorrow in our life. Ultimately, Upanishad is meant to make us happy. Happiness happens to be our nature. So really we do not have to be made happy. We have to be made to discover that we are happiness. Understand? By removing the sorrow or the notion of sorrow. It is the notion of sorrow that deprives me of my true nature of happiness, and therefore Vedanta, the Upanishad, teaches us how I am making a mistake about myself, how I am entertaining false notions about myself. The sorrow is not because sorrow is my nature. Sorrow is because I have these false notions about myself. And helps us to become free from these notions. Notions arise from taking the body to be myself, or identification of the body. So this is what will be done here also, in its own way. Every Upanishad does it in its own way, in a very beautiful way. Here also the ultimate purpose is to help us understand and know our own self by helping us to separate the self from the non-self. And a method is adopted here in this particular dialogue, which is very unique, to help us how I am different from the body, mind, sense complex. And that way know the true nature of myself. And what's the purpose of this akhyayika or the anecdote? Apart from facilitating, the in our mind the situation under which this dialogue took place, sometimes that anecdote is also for praising the Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya is knowledge of the self and knowledge of Brahman, to extol the Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya stutyartham. How when you say that this is a dialogue between King Janaka and Yajnavalkya, in what way is the knowledge praised or extolled? Because who is the disciple? None other than King Janaka was one of the greatest kings, and he also submits himself at the feet of sage Yajnavalkya and follows the instructions of Yajnavalkya. All the contemplation of ourselves and gains that knowledge, so this knowledge must be very valuable. when such great emperors also devote themselves to the pursuit of this knowledge, and that the knowledge has to be imparted by a teacher. Even though King Janaka himself was a very learned person, he did not attempt to know it himself or deliberate upon it himself. He requested the teacher to please impart him the knowledge, meaning that this knowledge has to be gained from a teacher. All of these little things we learn from what you call Akhyayika or the anecdote. And with that background, we will conclude this morning class now and continue discussion in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamada Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutrabhashyakrutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeri Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.